All right, awesome. And everyone can see my screen well? All right, great. So today I will be talking about my own personal experience at Rutgers, but of course, I do want this to be interactive. I don't want to be talking at you guys. I want to be talking with you guys. So throughout this, I'll be either asking questions where I'd like you guys to either raise your hands, or if you're not comfortable having your camera on, to just tap the little icon with your hand, just so we can kind of have some solidarity with each other on everything that's happening right now, or ways that you felt throughout your undergraduate career. And so my story is one of someone with a rare disease. However, I do believe that a lot of what I've gone through, a lot of other people have as well, and that we're a lot more similar than we think we are. And I will also talk about how I discovered cognitive science in general and a major at Rutgers, and how it kind of changed my career path. So before I start, I'd like to know my audience a little bit. So how many first years do we have? Hannah, do you know?
I don't know. You guys can write it in the chat.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Like a few.
Couple first years, couple second, third, and a couple seniors as well.
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, great. So let's start. So when I applied for colleges, I literally applied for 3 different universities because I was very certain that I would go to Rutgers. I always loved it, and it was a state school. I'd be close to home, and I pretty much planned everything that I was going to do at Rutgers. I had recently been diagnosed with Ehlers-Danos syndrome after about 2 years of doctor visits. I saw over 20 specialists, and at that point, I was just ready to kind of very naively put it behind me, and I was just ready to start new. So, of course, things kind of don't go as planned. This is a picture of my younger brother and I at my graduation. And on the outside, I kind of look like at myself, but on the inside, I kind of looked a bit more like Aaron. I was absolutely petrified. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And at the time, I thought my best bet was to just plan every single thing I possibly could. And for me, it was easy to go into science because since I was little, I've loved chemistry. I actually used to dress up as Marie Curie when I was younger because she's one of my idols. Here I am as Marie Curie at the tender age of 8 years old. So before I was physically at Rutgers, I actually had the honor of being in the marching band. And this was very important to me because I had a sense of community before I even joined. And I do believe that when finding a new environment, it's important to find things that bring you comfort, and having a source of grounding is very indispensable. So by show of hands, who here has kind of created a path at Rutgers where you found your family or you found something? So yeah, I think being thrown into band camp, getting to meet people from out of state was just absolutely incredible. And we got to do Rutgers Day, we got to march, we got to be on TV a couple of times. We also got new uniforms, and overall, it was a phenomenal experience for me. And what was especially great was the alumni association I was able to join afterwards, because even now I do try my best to keep as close to Rutgers as possible, even if I'm far distance-wise. And of course, going to football games instead of wearing my uniform, wearing the I'm with the band shirt. So my first science job was at the Center for Integrative Proteomics Research, where I worked as a work study student. And here you see me at Halloween with Dr. Helen Berman, whom of which is the director of the Center for Integrative Proteomics Research. And she is dressed as a protein, which is absolutely incredible. And my job was to set up for seminars, help with grants, help with more managerial type things. And I remember being very upset at myself because I hadn't gotten a research job immediately. And I lived in Best Hall, so I was surrounded by people who immediately started at Rutgers and immediately started researching. However, coming from a high school that didn't really have any opportunities in STEM, I had no idea it was even possible to start researching then. But I did slowly come to learn that being in an environment like this helped me to grow and network as an individual. And I want you all to kind of think about if you've ever found opportunities somewhere that you didn't really expect them to be. And another important aspect of my time at Rutgers was Best Gives Back. So as I said, I lived in Best Hall. And after I settled into my dorm, I joined, which is a campus service group dedicated to serving the local Rutgers community. So here we see us packing meals on Scarlet Day of Service. And this was actually my first ever event without the marching band. And this was a very big deal for me because, like many of you, I was absolutely terrified to speak to anyone or do anything that I was not absolutely sure of. But over time, I was able to kind of expand a bit. And within Best Gives Back, I became vice president, and I just stumbled upon this group. So to me, it was incredible to be able to grow like this. I literally just saw them having a meeting and joined in. So I encourage everyone to just fall into whatever roles you feel you will be valued in, because you never know when you'll find one. It could literally be across the door from you. So something else important to me at my time of Rutgers was kind of rediscovering my own culture. So I'm of Guyanese descent. I was born in Guyana, came to the US when I was very little, and grew up in New York City. And up until high school, I was surrounded by an environment that was very diverse. However, at my high school, I was the only person of Guyanese descent. And one of my fondest Rutgers memories was being on a Rutgers bus for the first time. And as we all know, that typically is not preceded with a fond memory. But I remember looking around and noticing that this single bus was just so diverse, and I felt so comfortable and I felt so at home. And having the opportunity to be in WISO, the West Indian Student Organization, going to Garba, going to Holi, bringing my friends to events like this, it really meant a lot to me. So I want you all to think about your own Rutgers community and where you found your niche and what niche was important to you and how you were able to rediscover yourselves, whether through your culture or who you were or your likes. So as I was settling into Rutgers, I was walking down the street across from the College Ave gym, sat myself down in front of the Wendy's, and was interviewed by a human of Rutgers very serendipitously. It was one of the coolest things that has ever happened to me. And I actually was very, very hesitant to speak to him at first. He's now a great friend of mine because of this. But this was absolutely, of course, not part of the Rutgers plan that I had literally written down into my journal. So I think this was a very important jumping off point for me, because it was when I started to realize that in order for me to enjoy my time here, I couldn't just go off of a book that I had written for myself. There were so many more opportunities that were surrounding me, and I shouldn't just stick to a single thing. But admittedly, I was a bit stubborn. And I think this is especially important now with everyone being at home, but I did get quite homesick. So I was sure to also go back to my old high school, and I did forensic speech and debate. So I judged some. The picture on the bottom left is my speech and debate coach, and I and a great friend of mine judging a competition. Well, kind of judging. We're having more fun than anything, to be honest. And on the right is a picture of my mother and I at Real Life for Life, which is another organization that is very near and dear to my heart. But I want you all to think about when you first came to Rutgers, how it felt being away from home, and how you were able to kind of bring yourself back there and kind of ground yourself with your community. But so that summer, I was able to kind of look into more of what was around me at Rutgers, and I finally got my first lab experience. And I think I took at least a selfie every week when I first started working in a lab. It was one of the most exciting things I had ever gone through. And at the time, I had already taken my first cognitive science class. I took human nature and diversity. And up until then, I actually did not even know cognitive science was a thing. I came into Rutgers wanting to be a genetics major. I was very, very set on that. But after taking my first cognitive science course, I decided to meet with Dr. Rigdon and kind of discuss, what else was available and what else was around me with that. And on the right, you see a picture of myself and Dr. Stephen K. Burley. He is another important person at the Center for Integrated Proteomics Research. I wanted to include this because he won some very fancy award, and I got so excited that I sprinted down to the area that was very heavily guarded by security, and I jumped over the wall to get a picture with him. So anyways, after beginning my first lab experience, I thought that I had everything very well planned. I had it very well set. And I want you all to think about when you first came to Rutgers, did you know exactly what major you wanted? Was it cognitive science? Were you also unaware that cognitive science even existed as a field? And since then, how has your major changed? How has it grown? And how has your passions and likes and dislikes changed as well? But as you all know, I do have a rare disease, and unfortunately, right when I thought things were coming together very well, things got a bit derailed and I was hospitalized for the first time. And I remember thinking, all right, this is a one-time thing. I just have to pick up the pieces and get back to Rutgers. I was on crutches for a couple of months. It was difficult, but it was feasible. However, every single time I felt that I was getting myself back together, I was hospitalized again. And as you can see here, I was extremely disgruntled about it. I felt as though I was constantly being pushed back. If there was even a point to me trying, if every time I would start to get myself together, it would just fall apart again. But I knew that for my own personal experience at Rutgers, it was important for me to keep doing research and to keep loving it because it was something that was very important to me. However, I do think that it is a very normal human experience to be upset and to be angry. And I want you all to kind of think about this one, and I'm sure I'll get many hands. Have you ever felt that when things were going absolutely great and phenomenal, that it just all of a sudden goes south? But as anyone who is frustrated, I felt that I needed to find an outlet. And for me personally, that was Rare Disease Day at Rutgers. And that was when I brought Rare Disease Day. And it kind of started off as a chance to just tell my friends about my experience. However, at the first Rare Disease Day, undergraduates, medical students, pharmacy students, graduate students, even faculty members joined in. And they asked me these questions that I felt were very important for the general public to understand. And at this event, I also met many individuals from throughout New Jersey that also had rare diseases and that were going through things that were both very similar and very different than my own. And I want you all to think about if you've ever felt comforted regarding a situation through solidarity with another person, through another person who understands it, whether exactly or whether much differently, because with rare diseases, they present themselves very different, yet somehow I was able to find people that kind of understood what I was going through. So after doing Rare Disease Day, I kind of found my voice at Rutgers and I joined STEM Her Story, a phenomenal group that is still on campus if there's any women in STEM or women presenting in STEM who would like to join. And I also went to many SEBS events regarding climate change, and I spoke to Dr. James Hansen, who is seen here, who is a very, very important climatologist in the fight for helping this earth and climate change. I also was part of the Office of Disabilities because I am a disabled student, so I was able to kind of talk to other disabled students about their experience as well and how the environment can kind of be better molded for them. So this summer was my first ever summer researching. However, it was also my first ever summer in and out of the hospital. And part of me was very proud because I felt that I finally did it. I got a research position. I think I found a major that I actually liked better. And part of me was still longing for something because I was in and out of the hospital. And due to my disorder, I couldn't leave even the Rutgers area. I couldn't drive due to my disease. I couldn't go far due to constant doctor appointments. And I kind of felt stuck in the same place. And has anyone else here ever felt very stuck in the same place? Especially, I'm sure now with how the current climate is. And I remember sitting in the hospital in pediatrics because I am a child and seeing this outside of my window where it said amazing things are happening here. And I remember just kind of thinking to myself, wow, I really, really hope so. And I felt that every time I would try to get somewhere, I'd kind of be pulled back. And being in and out of these doctor appointments, these hospital visits, these failed treatment windows, these failed treatment methods, I found solace in looking out the window and seeing this. So in the fall of my third year, I started at Rutgers. And despite still being in and out of the hospital, I felt that I kind of had a grasp on things. This picture is me spending my first day of class inpatient. And I remember that I was taking a quiz in the hospital when a doctor came in, and I actually had to stop taking my quiz because of this. And I felt very frustrated at first. And then I realized that it's completely all right. Everyone's different. This is my own personal battle that I have to go through. I have no choice. So I kind of might as well just go for it. And that same fall, Rutgers celebrated its 250th birthday. And amidst these celebrations, I felt that I was kind of celebrating too, because I felt that I was a new person. I was fully pledged into the individualized major of cognitive science, because that's right, as I was telling you guys before, back in my day, Rutgers did not have a cognitive science major. So I was very, very lucky to have Dr. Rigdon kind of guide me. And I actually began researching in her lab. So at this point, I was juggling credits, I was juggling hospital visits, I was juggling 2 labs and work study, but I felt that I needed this because for me personally, being surrounded by things and hobbies and passions kind of helped me push through this adversity. So I want you all to kind of ponder if you've ever felt that you've used your passions to push through adversity. And I'm sure you guys have seen these around campus, but this same time is when these images were taken of me. And the journalists who photographed us were very intrigued by my story, that I was a student who was researching the same disease that afflicted me very serendipitously. And they interviewed me about it, and I really didn't think anything of it. And at this time, I'm not sure if you all had noticed, but I had very long hair up until that point. And because of all the treatment methods, because of all the hospitalizations, my hair started falling out. And I remember thinking, I have to cut it. I have no other option at this point. And after cutting it, I had friends asking me, oh my gosh, why do you cut your hair? It looks so great. And to stop the questions, I dyed it rainbow, because what more can you do to hide adversity than to just throw rainbow colors onto it? But I was so afraid of telling people how sick I truly was that I just hid it from them, because I couldn't bear anyone knowing what I was going through. But shortly after this, I presented at my first ever poster session. That's right. An individual who got published twice in undergrad and is currently in a graduate school program did not present a poster until her third year, spring semester of her third year. And for some, that sounds absolutely impossible. But this is less of a question, more just a reminder that everyone goes at their own pace. And for me, it took a very long time for me to discover where I wanted to be, not just as a researcher, but as a Rutgers student as well. And although I still wasn't very sure of where I was headed, it was very, very comforting to me to know that I had presented and that I was able to do this. And that same summer, I continued my project at Rutgers, and I applied for over 50 industry positions because I wanted to make up for lost time, and I considered this the summer of redemption. I wanted to make up for the summers before where I was too sick to go out. All of my friends had landed these incredible industry positions, and I got absolutely 0 of them. I think I got maybe 2 interviews max. And I thought my life was absolutely over. I thought that I was not meant to be in science. However, my PI asked that I return that summer to continue my project on Ehlers-Danos syndrome. And looking back retrospectively, I'm very grateful I did, because I was able to further my project and also make phenomenal friends. This friend of mine is actually another individual with Ehlers-Danos syndrome who is also a researcher, and we have become best friends since. We were able to continue our project. I was able to collaborate with the biomedical science department, the engineering department at Rutgers, and I started kind of realizing that this is where I wanted to be. I loved academia, I loved research, and I wanted to keep doing this. And at the start of my fourth year at Rutgers, I remembered looking back and thinking, wow, I had no idea this is what I signed up for. I mean, I came in thinking that I was going to just brute force it through. I had a very clearly developed career plan. However, that very, very quickly changed. And I am happy it did, because I was able to discover cognitive science. And as someone who absolutely loves everything and loves everything about science, it gave me the chance to take classes that I otherwise wouldn't have taken, challenge myself. I pursued a minor in music because as a marching band student, I had the performance part of it already, but I wanted to kind of learn more as a student as well. And thus, I wanted to ask you guys if you've ever felt that you weren't able to keep up with your peers, but still kind of pursued what you thought was best for you. And as I continued to make up for lost time, I became the fundraising chair for the Society of Collegiate Scholars, and I also became an elected official, a committee woman for Piscataway, New Jersey. Here's me with Mayor Brian Waller and Senator Bob Smith, and this was an opportunity for me to kind of give back to the community, because I felt that through giving back to Piscataway, New Brunswick, and my surroundings, I would be able to kind of make up for lost time. And right when I was kind of getting comfortable again, and I thought, oh, maybe this is, we're going to settle down a little bit, the bandage was completely ripped off. Rutgers ran this story about myself at Rutgers where I learned about my illness and also researched it. And for many, this was a great chance for them to kind of learn about rare diseases. And I was very, very honored and grateful for this. But at the same time, this was everywhere. And my friends were sure to remind me of this. And I felt as though what was previously very secretive was now very, very in the public. And I started realizing that I had nothing to be ashamed of, that adversity wasn't something that you should hide from other people, that oftentimes people around us are going through something very different than your own, but at the same time, very, very similar. And that by talking about it, you might help someone that you never knew you were helping. And although friends, family, and strangers alike all knew my story, I felt that I was able to start learning more about myself as well, but yet I was kind of afraid to succeed. And I want you all to kind of think about if you've ever been intimidated by success, if you've ever been scared to do well. And at this time, I also started to work in my first gig in clinical research. And I was kind of dabbling with being an MD, PhD, pursuing medical school as well. But this was kind of my first chance at working with patients. And it was when I very much determined that my goal was to be in an MD, PhD program, to work with pediatrics with rare diseases that were similar to my own and very different from my own as well. And I absolutely loved working with patients, and I knew this was exactly where I wanted to be. And this is more so another prompt. I want you all to think about a job that you've done that has just made you feel absolute passion and joy, and a job that has just made you feel very at peace with yourself and what you love to do. And this is when I planned my final Rare Disease Day event at Rutgers, and it was where I invited Karen Haberberg as a speaker. She is the author of An Ordinary Day. And I remember going on her website after reading her book because it was about pediatrics with rare diseases. And this book didn't just speak about them as though they were just medical cases. They spoke about them as what they were, children, and their experiences and what they had gone through. And I did not expect her to attend, but she actually came, did a book signing, spoke about her book. And on the right is my best friend, Danny, who I met at my first rare disease day. She, at the time, was diagnosed with an unknown rare genetic disorder and completely by chance was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome shortly after meeting me. And her and I used to go to doctor's appointments together, and we kind of planned our appointments around the same time so we can hang out in Manhattan after, because that's where all our doctors were. And this was kind of solidifying to me that I wanted to work with rare diseases, not just as a researcher, but as a physician as well. And as you all know, I also spoke as a speaker of the MARC conference. And I have to say, this was one of the most difficult things I have ever done in my life. It was me being exposed and raw and having to really dig deep and reconsider all of what I'd done and all of who I was and replay it over and over again. But after this, and after speaking to people who had seen me speak, I realized that disclosing to people what I had gone through could be beneficial not only to others, but to myself as well. And although I wasn't really sure of who I was yet, I felt as though I was kind of learning that by talking to other people. So I want you all to think about how your adversity has molded you for the better and for the worse, because it's important to remember that you don't always have to be happy about something. You could be very upset. And there were many times that I was very upset about the disease that I had and about the things that I had gone through. And as I wrapped up my time at Rutgers, I kind of gained more traction after the MARC conference, especially, and I got more involved. I did dance marathon with some of my family members. Here I am with one of my nieces who participated as a tiny little dancer as well, because she was benefiting from the Embrace Kids Foundation. I did China Night, which I was very, very, very extremely hesitant to do, especially because I have a very bad case of awkwardness. But again, it was important for me to kind of step out of my boundaries and do things that I was uncomfortable with. And I did VPVA as well. And I was able to be in Phi Beta Kappa. And overall, the most important thing that I had done in my Rutgers career was to defend my interdisciplinary honors thesis. And there are many times throughout my career that I was very unsure of if I would be able to even graduate because of everything. But this solidified to me that I did want to be a researcher and that I really did love what I do. And having the opportunity to do an interdisciplinary honors thesis was also very important to me, because as a cognitive science major, I feel that it's important to bring every aspect and every perspective to the table, because it not only helps you with your own personal research, but also helps you with the process and thinking and understanding of what you're doing and why you're doing it. The biggest question is always the why. And after graduating, I thought that I was very sure of what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, but that was again very naive. And I hope you all remember the wonderful picture I showed of my younger brother that I used as an antidote. Turns out that he is very, very full of wisdom for his small size. And he is also a great anecdote for me to talk about my time as Rutgers as well, where on the left, it was me kind of entering, absolutely horrified, unsure of what was going to happen and what it'd be like. Kind of in the middle, where I was uncomfortable at times, very happy at times, passionate at times, very upset, scared, horrified, not really sure of what was even happening at some times. And towards the end, where I was content with what I had done and what I had achieved, the people I'd met, the things that I've done. And after graduating, I worked at the Robert Wood Johnson Clinical Research Center, where I was able to continue doing both wet lab research and working with patients. And in that time, I held a rare disease day event at Robert Wood Johnson again, where Karen and a friend of hers whose child is actually featured in the book was able to come. And I was also able to join Sati and go to super cool clinical research boot camps and conferences and things of the sort. And here I began doing my medical school interviews, where I was applying for MD PhD programs. And This was undoubtedly one of the most stressful times of my life. And on the left, you actually see me at my first day working under Dr. Rigdon in the cognitive science department as a research coordinator. So this bathroom might look familiar to you all. It is in the basement of the cognitive science department. And my job was to kind of help undergraduates with an experiment that we were doing. And for me, it was very important to continue researching at Rutgers, especially because I wanted to continue my cognitive science background, because I felt that it very much played a major role, not only in who I was as a researcher, but my goals as a researcher as well. And on the right, you see some of the many places that I interviewed at. And I thought that I kind of had it in the bag. I knew what I was going to do, but of course, the usual thing happened again. And in January of 2020, my EDS kind of progressed further. I was very, very upset about this at first, but then came to realize that it was important again for my growth as a person. But I spent my birthday in the hospital shortly after COVID hit. And the pictures on my right are what I like to call anesthesia Allysa pictures. But on the images on the left of this are ones pre-COVID, and on the right are post-COVID. And throughout my interviews and throughout COVID, I was in and out of the hospital. And I was interviewing for MD programs, PhD programs, and MD PhD programs. And I was very unsure of what I wanted to do until I kind of sat down with myself and thought about where I wanted to be in the future. And I decided that I wanted to start my PhD first, especially because of the pandemic and because it would be a risk for me to be in a hospital as an MD. And I started at SUNY Upstate. And I am very happy at this institution because I'm able to grow and learn as a scientist. And I feel that I still am very grateful to Rutgers. So I still am involved in STEM Her Story, but my cognitive science is very pivotal still. It gave me the critical thinking skills and creativity necessary to succeed in graduate school. Throughout my job interviews and my interviews for schools, I was asked why I did the cognitive science major. And like many of you, it was so I could kind of understand the world around me better. So I could take classes that were challenging and difficult and classes that I otherwise wouldn't have taken. And at this point, I would like to take any questions from you all.
I got a question.
Yes, I will actually stop sharing my screen. Oh, so I can see you all better. Oh no. Sure. Awesome, there you go.
So I know you said that Cox was an individualized major at your time,
Yep.
but I know right now the major has like tracks, right? So there's like they're like specific tracks for whichever subsection of cognitive science you would like to go into. Within your individualized major, was there a specific track that you pursued, and how did that specifically how has that helped you like in your career?
Yeah, so there were many pros and cons with it being an individualized major, but one of the biggest pros was that I had a lot of flexibility with it. So I was able to kind of pick and choose my classes without any pressure of having to fulfill very specific requirements that I know you all have now. And although those requirements are very important, at the same time, it gave me flexibility to kind of take classes that I otherwise wouldn't have taken. So for me, I think, I'm not sure if this is still available, the generalized cognitive science major.
No, I think everything's like a track.
It's a track now, yeah. So I fell under generalized cognitive science at my time.
Cool. Okay. And this is kind of it's a weird question, but what would you say like specifically if there were like a non like medicine or non-medicine based course, non like biology, chemistry, those kind of very medically focused courses that you think helped you, or not necessarily helped you, but affected you the most significantly within your cognitive science major, what would that be?
Definitely logic. I am definitely not a math person, but logic I think it changed the way I thought, the way that I handled problems, the way I problem solved. So taking logic very much helped me as a scientist as well, because there are many different ways that I was able to view problems that I previously wasn't viewing them.
Yeah, and I can attest that as well. I've taken Intro to Logic 201. I haven't taken 202, but I think I should, because I've heard nothing but good things about it. Yeah, it definitely changes the way you think, and yeah, I completely agree with that. So thank you for answering my question. I appreciate it. If you guys don't want to ask questions, you know, by unmuting, you can ask them in the chat, and Hannah and I can reiterate them for you.
Also, feel free to email me if you ever have any questions. I will put my email address in the chat. I am 100% here for anything you guys ever need, whether it's for cognitive science related questions or questions about applying to graduate school, things of the sort, because I was extremely lucky to have many phenomenal mentors throughout my Rutgers career, and I definitely want to give back to the community in any way I can.
Okay, so we have a question in the chat. So Charmaine asks, what kind of advice would you give to someone who who overplans everything? I love how you explain the way you handle the derailing, but in my experience, I can hardly go with the flow.
Yeah, definitely. That actually is something that I do still struggle with. And I think what I've personally learned is allowing myself to make mistakes more. And I do think that we're our own personal enemy. And whenever I do find myself starting to be overly critical of myself, I ask if I would be critical in the same way to someone else. Because a lot of times we don't realize that what we're saying may be hurtful to ourselves. And I function at my best when I'm planning and when I have a very well-written prompt in front of me of what I'm going to do. I plan all of my days. I have apps, I have journals, I have all of the above. But I've come to learn that things definitely don't always go as planned, and how I would react to someone else telling me that this isn't happening the way that it should. Because a lot of times I'll relate to myself the way that I'm beating myself up about something and realize that I'm just being absolutely absurd.
All right, I got another question if no one else has questions. So I think this is especially relevant for me, I think no, take that back. I think it's especially relevant for any of us right now in the pandemic, especially. It seems like you've had a really busy schedule at all times, and it seems like you've always had to juggle like a bunch of things on your plate. How have you dealt? Well, first of all, have you? That's kind of like a weird question. Of course, you've dealt with burnout and feeling overstressed. How have you dealt with that and like kept yourself on track?
So that's actually why I minored in music. I did because it kind of forced me to do something I love. And for me personally, I am very bad at scheduling self-care time. So for me, the way that I found self-care was by taking music classes, because it was something that I loved very much. And whether I liked it or not, I had to be in class and I had to be doing something regarding that. So I think one of the best ways to kind of avoid burnout is to find something that you really truly love and to give yourself time to do that. Because especially in individuals like ourselves that are in the STEM field, you kind of feel pressure to constantly be doing something. And sometimes self-care in and of itself is very anxiety inducing, because you feel like you have to schedule self-care. So for me, doing stuff that I really love, but making very identified times for it helped me a lot. And even finding things that kind of produce something that you love as well, where for me, I love making music like digitally. So having something to play back to myself, I'm able to say, hey, I did something here. And I am by no means artistic in any way, shape, or form, but for some, it may be painting or drawing, and seeing the end product as a way to kind of like ground yourself and bring yourself back.
Thank you. That was helpful.
I had a question. So what are you currently researching in graduate school now, and has cognitive science sort of made its way into that research in any way?
Yeah, so I am currently in the Department of Biochemistry and molecular biology, and I am researching intrinsically disordered proteins. So it's proteins that don't have like a very organized structure, and they form these very cool phase separated droplets in cells. And it's a very new and emerging field. And I think that's what drew me to it. And I think that's where it does kind of bring me back to cognitive science, because I love emerging science. I love the feeling of knowing something that hasn't yet been disclosed. So I remember when I was researching at Rutgers and we first got our assays to work, I remember kind of thinking in my head, wow, like there is information that I know that a lot of other people don't know. And I just found it amazing because there's so much knowledge to be found. And I think especially in cognitive science, where it's knowledge that's very applicable to many different things and very translatable as well.
Thank you. Rita asks, what kind of goals are you currently working towards now?
Yeah, so about 90% of me is still working towards finishing my PhD and obtaining an MD as well afterwards, so I can be a physician scientist. The other 10% of me really, really likes academia and wants to just stay in academia as a PI. And I think there is some part of me that is a little bit curious about industry as well. But I think at the time, my biggest goal is to just do my best in grad school, especially with the surroundings, because as you all know too well, a lot of things are constantly changing. And because of that, I want to kind of give myself as much room as possible for that.
We've got another question. So it seems like you've done a lot of great amount of research. So how do you decide what to pursue? I'm relatively new to it and I'm not sure if I should go for what's available or what I'm interested in.
Yeah, so that's a really, really great question, because I find that in research, a lot of times what's important is just kind of getting your hands wet, whether it's like in silico or in vitro, but kind of getting yourself into it, because there's no way to know what you'll like until you start it. Because a lot of times you think that you won't really like a project too much and you'll start it and you'll realize you really, really love it. And something that my PI now always tells me is that I'm training, that what I'm doing now won't be what I'm doing forever. I think there's a number floating around out there where an individual changes their career every 7 years. So remember that what you do research in undergrad may not be what you research forever, but at the time that will be valuable to you. And even if it's not something you want to do forever, it could still be something you like very much. And it doesn't need to be the exact thing. It could just be something you really like.
Rita asks, what is an important networking advice you would give?
Yeah, so I would definitely say that everyone is valuable, that even if it's not a field you think you're interested in, even if you think it's not something you'll never pursue, everyone has knowledge to give, everyone has advice, even if it's someone who is significantly younger than you, someone who isn't in a field that you're in, someone that isn't even in something that you would consider. They have knowledge to give you that you don't know otherwise. So it's important to kind of have them as a resource. And in undergraduate especially, I find that you kind of get yourself in a niche in your major, and it's very, very difficult to break out of that because you're kind of put in there. But it's important that when you're networking to remember that even if someone may not be what you're looking for at the time, you can learn something from them. So I'd say if the person is there, try your best to talk to them. And if you're too shy, that is extremely understandable because everyone's different. Try to email them because most of the time people do really like helping and they're there to help.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with this as well. There was actually a past speaker that I reached out to who I thought I would definitely like vibe with in terms of research. And he recommended me to reach out to someone else. And while, you know, I don't necessarily, I mean, I still definitely enjoy going to meetings and you know, and touching in with this person time to time. The other connection that they gave me was much more beneficial, even though the first one isn't necessarily as strong. And so, yeah, you never know like what you'll get from different people. It was such like a tangential like connection between those two people, and like it's really just it's maximizing the probability of finding someone that you like by just going crazy and just interacting with as many people as possible. So yeah.
I have a question. So I'm a first year student, and like I just feel like I'm such an indecisive person. So like I'm not sure exactly what I want to do. And like I'm always getting frustrated at myself for like not knowing what I want to do. And and also I guess just like going off of that, I don't know what I'm particularly passionate about. So like when it comes to like, I know that you only, like you were saying about research, you only know if you like it when you actually experience it, right? So in terms of like finding opportunities, I feel like if I'm not like truly passionate about something, I feel like how am I going to get opportunities, and how am I gonna, because I don't want to like fake it and act like I'm super interested in something, but at the same time, I do want to like try different things. So I guess, sorry, that was such a chaotic question, but I just want advice, I guess, how to go about all this.
Yeah, definitely. So I think what's very important and is something that I'm still kind of coming to terms with is that PIs are people too. So they understand that you're in undergraduate right now. What you're doing with them isn't always going to be what you always want to do, but kind of work more towards the end of what you can learn, not just what you're doing there. And it's very, very normal to be indecisive. And it's actually good because it means you're curious and it means that you want to try a lot of things. So now's the time for you to do it. Now you have the world is your oyster. So without overwhelming yourself, try to do as much as possible. And it's definitely harder with COVID, but I think what could be beneficial is going to online conferences, trying to go to talks, try to see different researchers, what they have out there. In graduate school right now, I try to go to at least one talk a week to kind of see research that is different from my own, because even if it's not something that I think I'm personally passionate about, I at least get to learn something and get to see something that's kind of different than my own. And who knows, maybe you'll stumble upon something that you really like.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to ask any more questions?
Yeah, I have another question, I guess more specifically about the research you did when you were an undergraduate. So I guess like your first research opportunity, what was it like, I guess, like every day in the lab?
Yeah, so I actually am very close to the graduate students that I worked with still. So it's great messaging them like, wow, guys, I really did go to you guys for every single little thing. But I just remember being absolutely petrified of asking questions, but realizing that the only way that I would learn anything and help the lab was through asking questions. But definitely for at least the first 3 months, I think that I pretty much walked on glass and felt as though if I did even one little thing wrong, it would be the end of the world. And retrospectively, as a graduate student now, I break glass maybe at least once a week. And I've come to learn that it's okay to make mistakes. Everyone is in a learning environment. Undergraduate's a learning environment. Graduate school is in a learning environment. And like taking it as such is very, very important because that's how you'll get the most out of it.
Awesome, thank you. That's like really reassuring because like, I don't know, the lab environment seems so intimidating, especially because I don't have any like wet lab experience. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I was very lucky where the labs that I've been in have been very helpful. And although some labs are a lot different than others, I find that finding someone as a mentor is also very, very, very helpful because it's good to have someone to kind of go back to, and also having peers that are mentors as well, because a lot of times the most beneficial people to me are people that are in classes with me that are also researching with me because they're doing the same thing I'm doing, and they could also answer questions and take notes about things that I may have missed.
Um, I want to ask a question, but again, if anyone else has questions, please feel free to ask because we are, approaching the end of our meeting. So, I'm giving you like 5 seconds to come forward. Okay, so my question would be, how does it feel to to be researching a condition that you have. I think that's really interesting, and I think it's like actually really, really cool. In terms of, I guess I want to narrow that down because it's a very vague question. Does it feel rewarding, and does it make you, because I know there's a big problem in academia where, you know, people often reach a lot of like hiccups. Does having this condition, do you think, make you more willing, make you more, you know, give you more perseverance to really just follow through with this and keep trying your best?
Yeah, definitely. I think that it helps me a lot with the big picture because a lot of what we're doing is to advance science and to kind of help people in the general community. And what I especially like about rare diseases is that in rare disease research, although you're researching a very niche topic and a niche disease, a lot of times, a lot of medications that were originally orphan drugs meant for just rare diseases have become very, very important in mainstream as well. Like, for example, Botox and Humira are both drugs that initially began just for rare diseases, but have become indispensable in the medical community. So for me personally, researching EDS was very important because I realized that I wasn't just helping the direct EDS community, I was also helping the medical community as well, because although EDS is rare, a lot of its comorbidities aren't. And we were in particularly looking at aortic aneurysms. So that is something in the general population that is like a major affliction. So kind of having it and having a rare disease, even now, it kind of brings it back and zooms me back out where I'm able to remember that there is a reason why we do this. And the reason is to help people.
All right, thank you so much. All right, guys, if we don't have any more questions, I think we can end this meeting 3 minutes early. Thank you guys so much for coming. I know it's hard, especially during, you know, semi-exam season. And again, 9:30, 8:30 is 9:30 every night, or every Wednesday night can't be easy. So again, we just want to thank you very much for coming. Thank you. Thank you, Allysa, for coming to speak with us. Excellent presentation, really inspiring, quite frankly. I'm energized to you know, try a lot harder. Yeah, again, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys very much for having me. Again, please reach out with any questions at all. I'm more than happy for anything.
Okay, great. I think
make
we
a
might
quick
have
announcement?
a couple of announcements. Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Cool. Cool. So recently, our merch shop opened for the semester. So if you're interested in buying any merch, I'll link it in the chat. And yeah, there you go. You can buy merch up until May 10th. So the shop's going to close at that time, and then they're going to compile all the orders, and then they're going to ship out the merch to you guys. So yeah.
All right, and here comes my announcement. We have our undergraduate research conference on April 30th. We're really, really, really trying to promote this. So please, if you're interested in that, the sign up is right at the top of our link tree. And if you want to check out more about it, you know, get some more information about it, I'm linking the website right now. And if you can't necessarily make it, please try to reach out to people who you know do research, have interesting research ideas, because we need a lot of participants for this poster session. And that's only one part of it. We have a great panel of people coming in from Rux to speak, and we have an amazing keynote speaker, Patrick Shafto, who literally does everything. I don't know how he does everything, but he does. He does a lot of things and focuses on a lot of disciplines. Really, I guess, like the epitome of interdisciplinarity. So yeah, please try to promote this, and please sign up if you feel like this is something you'd be interested in. And again, thank you guys for coming so late. Really do appreciate it. And we'll see you next week for Dr. Daniel Dennett, which is huge. So please be there. That's an amazing event. All thanks to Hannah. So yeah, thanks guys.